How's it going? I am going to give you a little bit of background on how I grew up, on how I ended up the mess that I ended up, and how it really makes no sense. It's sort of like a nature versus nurture thing, but in my case, definitely, I was definitely nurtured. My dad had at least when I was around 8, he got a really good job. He always worked, but he got a slamming job. My mom got a really good job. Um, we moved from the bad part of town to a really good part of town. I lived right next to the high school. But I think it was just the curiosity, the outside influences that I just really wanted to be a part of. I always wanted to be part of everything. Um, Identity issues for sure. Big identity issues. I am half white and half Mexican. My mom is Mexican and my dad is white. My mom had 12 brothers and sisters. Yeah, it's crazy how many kids they used to have back in the day. But this funny little town I grew up in, it's a real small town. Used to be a real small town. And it's like smack dab in the middle of everything. I mean, you couldn't ask to grow up in a better place. It's just a complete melting pot. Um, I mean, everything you could want to do, everywhere you could, at least everywhere I could want to go, was not much less than an hour away. I mean, some parts of the year you could go up and go snowboarding. It's only an hour and 45 minutes away, and then you could go the other direction and end up at the beach. And then the whole San Francisco Bay Area was a playground for me. That was like my stomping grounds back in the day, along with the city that I grew up in. For sure, it was a lot of fun. I mean, but the like I said, the identity issues. Uh, I was spoiled out of my mind as soon as my parents had the money. Even when my parents didn't have the money, they spoiled the hell out of me. I was a real quiet kid. I was that kid that would like freak out and clam up if a adult raised their voice. Yeah, I would just freak out whenever any kind of discipline. I was just quiet, real quiet, and then I think probably what happened is I got sick of it. I got sick of always being scared. There's no reason. My parents didn't hit me. Nobody, you know what I mean. Nobody hurt me. I was just that way, I guess, quiet and timid and scared. And then when I went to probably junior high, that's when things started to change for me. I always had issue with picking a side, and I never did. If you looked at my closet, I had my closet split up to where these are my these are my preppy clothes. These are my hang out with my BMX friends. This is my gangbanger clothes. Is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Um yeah, the high school I went to was right across the street from my house. So during lunch, before lunch we would I had bought this big giant tote, like the big giant Rubbermaid totes, and we would buy these 14-ounce boxing gloves. We had like 12 pairs of them, and we would go around school and figure out who was gonna get them up that day, and we would all take bets, and we would do crazy stuff like it'd be three guys fighting, but a free for all, but they had to have one hand tied behind their back. And then just, I mean, all our neighbors would, during lunchtime, we'd ditch high school real quick. We'd box and then, running back to high school real quick right after lunch. All our neighbors would come outside and watch all of us dummies while out. But my parents were my parents were no strangers to partying. it was a fun house. We had a swimming pool. Like I said, I was spoiled rotten. You know, had my own big TV in my room, all of that, all of that. And then the whole gang life just intrigued me. It was very alluring to have what I felt was like almost like a brotherhood of people who would at the snap of a finger come to your aid, and I mean I don't know what drew me to it, but I was always attracted to that. And then further into high school, well actually by my sophomore year, I started I started smoking weed like a lot. And then I started noticing that a lot of the guys that were in my classes, the ones that were hanging out with all these pretty girls and having these big parties, and they'd be going on vacations and stuff, they smoked weed too. And that was my in with that group. I don't even know how it started. Oh, I actually do know how it started. I went to the lake one time. Went out to the lake out here. There's a lake like 45 minutes away, and it used to be real crazy out there during Memorial Day. Memorial Day, it was crazy. I mean, wild. There's a big bridge out there, and right underneath the bridge, it's called Spanish Flats. Everybody would meet up. I mean, hundreds of boats tie up in a big giant circle, and then you just go boat hopping all the way around. There's like the Girls Gone Wild boat out there, the Budweiser pontoon boat, and I mean, people got airlifted every year for alcohol poisoning, God knows what else. But I went with a buddy of mine out there, and I recognized, one of them guys from my class, and then like hadn't talked very much, but his family's rich and they had a boat, and his parents just let him and his sister just take the boat. And I heard him yell my name, and I was like, "Oh, hell yeah!" I'd ditch my shoes in the bush. We swam out there, and they had a really nice campsite up the way. Which, I mean, getting a campsite out there for Memorial Day is like, first of all, it's expensive as hell, and you gotta like reserve it like 2 years in advance every time you go, because it's just so wild. Especially back then, it was way more wild, way more wild. But after that, they invited me back to the campsite to kick it, and then I started hanging out with them all the time. Like, it was a blast. There's the particular one, the one with the boat. Both Most of their parents had boats, but one of them I kind of got really close to, like, and his family, and like slowly but surely, like all these other rich kids that were his friends kind of like all got to know me, and we 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 became like a big group of friends, and I kind of started leaving the gangbang thing behind. Like, I realized, I mean, it was always in my life, all my cousins, a bunch of my uncles and stuff. Like, I still had that part of my closet, don't get me wrong, but when I went to school, I just started throwing on the other act. You know what I mean? I mean, let's put it this way. When I was doing the gangbang stuff, there were no there wasn't a bunch of money. There wasn't a bunch of girls that, would think you're cool, and at least in that city, what I mean, there everything that I thought was alluring about it that would happen never happened. And I realized that if I partied with these guys, like, way more girls, way more fun, way more parties, and then not the risk of losing your life either. The risk of losing your life ain't there. Well, I mean, I guess it is everywhere, but yeah, I mean, his parents would take, like, there's like 8 of us that were real close, and then about 20 of us that were 20 altogether that were, and his parents, they would take us to Lake Shasta on these big giant houseboat. It was called the Titan. I think it was like back then too, in like around 2006, no, around 2004, 2005, and 2006. We went 3 years. This big giant houseboat called the Titan cost them 14 grand for a week, and it was a triple tier boat with a swirl down water slide. And I mean, we would go out on the, they had that that Mastercraft boat, and we'd go out there ripping on the jet skis, just a blast. I mean, wakeboarding, all that. And it got to the point to where my other group of friends, they really just, they really didn't know what to think, because I was still kind of trying to stay in the mix with them. And the cops definitely didn't know what to do with me. I mean, they stopped me all the time, but we had a gang unit at our school, which it really didn't need a gang unit. It wasn't that bad, but they had a gang unit at our school, and they would see me kicking it with this particular group of kids. And we'd be at, like, they'd catch me in shady neighborhoods, because when school was out, they worked the beat, and they'd see me, in these shady neighborhoods, and with all these kids. And then they'd see me at school kicking it with these kids, and they didn't know what to do. I had one ask me, "What are you?" And I said, "Sir, I don't know." Actually, I got a really good story. I had a really bad habit of dating cops' daughters. Yeah, bad habit. Don't do that. Especially if you just don't do that. But I was dating this cop's daughter off and on for a long time. And at one point, we started getting really serious. And she was basically like, "Oh, if we're gonna make this work, you've got to go to because I was going to church with them all the time. That's how I got introduced. I saw what I thought was a perfect family. You know what I mean? They took me to Disneyland, all kinds of stuff I'd never done before. But she was like, if you're gonna go, if we're gonna be closer, I need you to go to a Bible study. You gotta start studying the Bible with the fellowship." And her dad was like this old cowboy who just fucking hated my guts. Hated my guts. I know why. Like when she was 15, I convinced her mom to let her get her belly button pierced, and I was turning his little perfect world inside out, and I was this little punk kid. And anyway, what was I talking about? Okay, yeah, the Bible study. So after arguing and fighting and all that, I was like, yeah, I'll do it. So I had gotten off of work because I had a little job at that time, and it was like in the evening. She gives me the address, and I ride over there. I'm supposed to meet her dad over there, and I knock on the door, and it's all his cop buddies, and the house who it is the gang unit cop from my school. He looked at me like I was there to rob the place, and then he looked at my girlfriend at the time's dad, looked at me, looked back, like, "What the hell are you doing here?" I just turned around and walked away. Anyways, we will talk later. Bunch more stories. Thanks for kicking it. This is The Ride.